Pastor Mickey Saunier of the Rock Church was at Ground Zero for the first 2 weeks after that attack, and he joins us now with his story.
Yeah,
good morning, Pastor. Thank you for being here. I don't want to say that I made the mistake, but I started watching a documentary last night, fairly late in the evening, about September 11th, and it was all about the firefighters. I couldn't sleep all night long, knowing and seeing what everybody was going through during that time, and I cannot believe it's been almost 20 years.
Yes.
You were there?
Yes, I was part of a response team for airline disasters, and my on-call month was September. And so that led me with 8 other chaplains from around the country to be in New York for the first 2 weeks to serve at Ground Zero for the firefighters, the urban search and rescue teams, for the Family Assistance Center, and the morgue. And one of our other local pastors, Mike McIntosh, was there with me as well. Together, great friend, and had the privilege and honor to serve for the first couple of weeks, yes.
And part of the story, and I'm sure that we're going to see many this week as we look back on this event 20 years ago, there was a pastor there who they have video, and he was praying, and you could see the fear and the confusion in everyone's eyes at that time. And at that moment I stopped and I wondered, 20 years goes by, I wonder what these people are feeling today. Is it as painful as it was back then?
Well, everyone processes things differently, but yes, many of the survivors, the responders, actually have issues with cancer, post-traumatic stress disorder, very real. I myself have had 2 bouts of cancer related to 9/11.
Really?
I have vitiligo, where 2 weeks after I got back, you start losing your pigment. So there are physical, there's mental, emotional, but there's a lot of studies that have been done of what responders should do, can do. Sadly, over the last 20 years, suicide rates have actually outnumbered line of duty deaths amongst firefighters and police officers. So, they respond to 9/11 events all year round, 24/7, 365 days, This is an amazing magnitude, huge event, but there's personal events they continue to respond to.
Does it get easier? Does it change? What do you feel on this week as we're now getting ready to approach the 20th year?
Well, for me personally, I really felt honored. It's called compassion satisfaction, to be able to serve. My memories have really so many distinct aspects of the people I got to be around, people I got to help, the families I got to counsel with, pray with, to encourage, and working alongside the many firefighters, police officers, the Port District. So really a lot of honor, and yet the country's changed so much in 20 years. For those first 2 weeks, our country unified. We had a common enemy, the tragedy, it's called post-traumatic growth. We drew together as a country, and now 20 years later, I wish we could get back to that heart of loving one another and uniting together rather than the division we're seeing on so many different levels.
Do you speak to anybody that you met back then, 20 years ago, families and?
Actually, yes, still in touch. A number of chaplains I served with, some of the community members, mostly police, fire that we were working with, we still are in touch. So absolutely, a lot of distinct memories. A lot of people retired. Now, as a chaplain for San Diego Fire Rescue and a number of agencies here locally, I'm older, I'm a volunteer, so continue to serve, and it's just what an honor to be able to continue to serve those who sacrifice all.
When we go back to mentioning that day of September 11th, I remember exactly where I was. I think many of us, almost all of us do, but there is a generation who could be watching right now, including my little kids. They don't know what happened. They did not see what happened. What is the lesson as we're starting to have these conversations again on the 20th year that we can take from that, and what we could talk to this generation about what happened on that day?
Well, keep telling the story, where you were that day, how it impacted you. It's important, the narratives we continue to tell, but to lay a foundation again of honor and love. Pastor Miles at the Rock Church wrote a book called The Third Option, dealing with so much tension and division, and his encouragement is that we honor one another, take time to hear, and then love. And so for our children and children's children, continue to tell the story, but emphasize love, not hate.
And that's what I want to ask you. Finally, I know the past few weeks for many of us, even the strongest of us, has been extremely overwhelming. There's so much happening in the world, Afghanistan, the pandemic. Sometimes we just feel like we can't breathe. Like, what is going on? What would you tell us? Do you have something you could tell us?
Well, actually, there was a study, New England Journal of Medicine, after 9/11, asked, how did you cope during this tragedy? 90% cope by talking. They call it cathartic ventilation. Tell the story. We need to tell the story, what's on your heart. Number 2 was faith. To encourage your perspective of life, because when the world doesn't make sense, when we say, why are things like this happening, it takes us to the core of what we believe about the world, about people. And then the third thing they found, that people cope by turning for friends and family. And so I call it 3 F's: faith, family, friends. Those things need to be our focus. That's how we deal with life, and always let love reign.
Let love reign. Did you hear that, friends? I love that. I'm carrying that with me now. Thank you, Pastor, for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it.
All right.